Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started. Well, how are you today?
I'm good. So what the audience doesn't know is you and I have been in the closet for, has it been 2 hours already?
About that, yeah.
2 hours, not recording, just me complaining,
Maybe
venting.
we should just turn the mic on at some point, even just for our own humor to listen back to it.
Right. No. I don't want that recorded or saved or cataloged by any stretch.
True.
But I was basically like, I haven't met up in a little bit. You've been on vacay.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, here are all the things that are going on in my office. Is any of this good, useful fodder for the podcast? And I was quite pleased when you said one of the things so you're going to be in our office on Wednesday,
yes,
full day, and there are certain team members we need to talk to and certain things that we need to whatever, right? Like typical day, bread and butter consulting day for you. And one of the things we do every month when you're there, we have our engagement scales. And I know we've talked about them before, but basically it's our kind of like where we have a paper that everybody gets. And that week it's one team member. And it's basically a feedback form. Like,
yes,
how are you doing? Are they engaged or not? Are they performing well? Are they
about
not?
Other team members.
Yeah. So, and then it goes in a folder in my office. So they just drop it off and it's anonymous. They don't have to put their name on it. And so like, say week 1 is Jenny and then week 2 is Sally. And so everybody in the office gets a form with Jenny's name on it. And it's like, okay, fill this out for Jenny if you have anything to say. I think this is an age-old problem of people that circle, Jenny's great, but then they talk about how terrible Jenny is. And I'm like, this is useless. And then other people that feel like they're being mean if they put something on there, or it's an invasion of privacy. It can go all over the place. But my question always has been, but how do we keep a pulse on, it happens all the time where I'm like, oh, this employee is doing fantastic. And then you read these and you're like, oh God, like nobody else thinks they're doing fantastic. They're fooling me. And then it's flip way too, where I'm just like, this employee might need to go. And then the engagement scales come back and it's like, thank God for this employee. We love this employee for this reason. And I'm like, oh, I'm picking on said employee for no reason. Because I was only here 2 days last week and she drove me crazy, but everybody else who's been here every other day. So I found them very helpful. Mm-hmm. And we kind of hit a rut there. So for about, maybe a year or less than a year, we'd been doing, we'd kind of brushed because we've done them off and on in the past. And it was probably last year at when our front desk imploded at the end of, the triple firing at the end of the summer. So we kind of quit doing them for a while.
Yeah.
And then I want to say by the end of last year, we were like, we need to bring this back up.
Yeah.
So they've been super helpful, and then suddenly they weren't so helpful anymore because I think it just kind of got
too repetitive.
We were probably doing them too often. So I think after each employee had gone through it 3 times, they were kind of getting stale.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to my person who helps me handle it, and I was like, you know what, let's pause. And it was probably maybe in April where I was like, let's pause. We'll start them back up in July or something. Well, then you and I were talking and I can't even remember what ignited it, but basically we were like, maybe it's time to change up the scale. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of took some of the old one and I changed it. Maybe this came after one of our leader meetings.
Yes, it did. And it was when we were in the heavy talks of culture and...
Yes.
And all of that kind of led to more detailed, thorough engagement forms. So we were kind of like, oh, it's too repetitive. Let's just set them aside for a little while. But essentially through a lot of different conversations, it was like, no, we actually need more detailed information on those engagement scales. And that led to you recreating this engagement scale, which I love.
Yeah. And so you were just like, oh, this is so much better. I'm like, it is? I did good? I'm like, okay. Because I did this on my own. I didn't have any help on this. So I think what you wanted to do, maybe, do we need to say what we did before and how this is different? Or you want to just start with this?
I think let's start with it. Well, no. Yeah. No, let's start with this. I think that's going to be the easiest thing. And as a reminder, these are forms that each and every, it doesn't matter whether they're in the same department or not. The whole team fills out one of these forms for a designated team member that week. So due to the size of your team, each week there's an engagement scale going out to all team members to fill out a form for A employee, B employee the next week, C employee the next week. So every week they're in the habit of doing this, which means on your size team, every 2 months or so, they've got a whole new set of engagement scales. And then those are reviewed in detail with each employee. So every 2 months, it leads to them being able to sit down and see what their team is saying about them. So that's the form, and that's the frequency of the form. And now if you could walk us through the design of the form.
And what we do with the form then, and what we were doing with our previous form that didn't have as many detailed questions, it was just a numerical, like, it was a quarter sheet of paper. Yeah. And the 1 to 10, I did not create. I got that from Scheduling Institute. And it was a good one that you basically circle like 10. There's no room for improvement. They're fantastic. And I liked, like, number 5 was too
good to fire.
Yeah, nothing great, but not bad enough to fire. Yeah. And I was like, ooh, man, if I got a 5, like, as a team member going...
That would sting.
Yeah, that would sting. So you really kind of want to get up at the 8, 9s, 10s, but there were different words that described what a 10 was, what a 9 was, what an 8 was. So people would just kind of go through and circle the words or circle the rating, and then they could make comments on it if they felt like it. Yeah. So certainly the ones that were just circles were kind of useless. The people that took the time to give some constructive feedback was helpful. And then what we would do with those is I would save them that when you were in the office next, you would pull these employees and kind of go over their rating scales with them. Yeah. So what we liked about that is they knew that it's not just that it was going to come, and with you going over it with them, the point was to be constructive. Yes. And if there were deficiencies, what could we do about those deficiencies? So how could we talk about it? So again, when I say people are looking forward to it, I don't think so. Like, nobody wants to be critiqued, but I think it's set up that environment that everybody's going to go through this.
Well, and I think even on the old form, I think it's interesting for me to see this because I can see the difference that the form has had in those conversations. But on the short little previous form, I do think even that was helpful because people would make comments like, oh, it's good to see that I'm actually making a positive impact on my team. If the ratings were positive, or if there were little comments like, man, we couldn't survive without you, or things like that, for those that are doing a really good job, they're like, oh, that makes me feel really good to know that I'm making an impact on my team, a positive impact. And then on the flip side, for those that maybe had lower scores that were surprising to them, or comments like, you seem disorganized all the time, they were like, whoa, I seem disorganized to my team, because this is 100% team led. And so then that would lead to more conversations. Now, the problem is there wasn't a ton of detail. So you seem disorganized. It was like, well, who said that? Why would they say that?
What were they talking about?
What were they talking about? And me being kind of the moderator of that, I'm like, I don't know. Let's try to figure it out together. How do you think you come across disorganized? But it was just speculation at that point. Whereas this form allows much more detailed commentary, which I think has been helpful. In the ones that I've reviewed so far using this new scale, the detail has been much more helpful.
Can you go over real quick how you used to and how you will continue? Like, do you take the scales and just hand them over to them?
No.
So can you walk us through what you do with that?
The reason that I don't hand it over is there's enough handwriting on some of them that these are supposed to be anonymous. Now, that is what I cannot do with this new form. But on the old form, that little quarter sheet, the feedback section was at the very bottom of it. So if there was a bunch of those words in the categories, the 7, 8, 9 category that were circled, I would physically hold my hand over the feedback at the bottom, the handwritten part, and I would show the numbers to the employee. The numbers are the words, and I would go, let's look at some repetitive words that we're seeing. And we would go through each form, and I'd cover up the feedback and show them those repetitive words. And I was like, look at how many times has been circled volunteers for leadership. I see that as a real strength on all these forms that we've looked at together. And so we would kind of see some of those repetitive themes, and then I would turn the paper back to myself where they can't see, and I would say, now let's look at the written feedback. And I would read off the comments, and I would actually document those comments so that I could remember them. I would send to you in note format so that it could be added to HR files if needed. But then those comments would just be only me looking at them for anonymity reasons. This new and revised form, I can't show anything because there's much more handwritten part. It's harder for me to cover up. The middle section is a lot of handwriting. So the last couple times that I actually sat and reviewed this, I didn't show them the form. And there's fewer words that can be circled. I feel like when the old form was all just number or circle words, that was really the only way that people could give feedback is by circling words. So there was like 20 words circled on one person. So instead of me verbally reading off every word, I would just hiding the feedback, I would show those written words. This one, I feel like because there's more opportunity for written feedback, there's fewer circled words. So it's easier for me to keep the form completely to me, and I'm just reading off the 3 or 4 circled words rather than feeling the need to actually turn and show them those words.
And what I like about this, and even the other scale, there are I've never had one that only had negatives from every person. No. So there is like feedback that's positive.
Yes.
So that way when you go over it with the employee, you've got some positive and some areas of improvement. And that's what they should learn to expect, is that, obviously if you were messing everything up, you would have been fired by now. Mm-hmm. But, again, it's interesting how intuitive they are for the most part. They know when they're slacking. They know how they're being perceived in the office. So, I think
sometimes they've been surprised, like if they've got life stuff going on and then their scores, because they're sitting down and hearing this every couple of months, and the feedback is a little less positive than they're used to. I've seen people make the equation like, oh gosh, I got to get my stuff together because apparently I'm bringing that to work. I thought I wasn't, but it's evident that I'm obviously bringing that to work. So it's even been like a light bulb moment for some people.
That at least we don't have to say it. Mm-mm. It's like this. I'm just reading to you what's on this form.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we changed this up, and this is not going to be the first time on Wednesday that you're using these forms, is it?
No. I've used them. Yeah. Last month was the first one.
And then as far as frequency on this one, I might because we might take a break. Like right now it being June, and I think everybody's gone through it once. I might not pull them back out until like July.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure I'm giving them a chance to work on some of the things. And that way too, if we see that they're clearly not, like it's 3 weeks later and it's still like the same stuff, then you and I pull them in separate. But it gives us a good spot to kind of land, I guess, and then jump off from there. And like you said, something else you said there that was super important was this is what helps for your HR files as well. Mm-hmm. So that we've got kind of a regular loop going. And if there are things that are not, I think I have said this before in a previous podcast where I would pull these out when I was so frustrated with 1 or 2 employees. I'm like, everybody's getting an engagement scale now, right? And so that was almost viewed as, a
negative thing.
Yeah, we're in trouble. Who's causing the trouble? This, because they get it routinely and regularly, it's become like we're supposed to grow.
Yes.
Kind of like with our products and our patient care. Like we get our continuing education. We want to make sure we're at the top of our game. This is also, how am I doing as an employee, as a person?
Yes.
So at the top it says engagement scale, and then it says who the team member is. So people write down, whoever that week, if it's Sally's name gets on there, and then the week that it is. And then we still have please circle a rating, but instead of numbers from 0 through 10, I kind of combined a lot of the words and made it into a high So circle a rating and your choices are high, good, moderate, or low. And so in high, we have passionate, influencing, high tone level, efficient, role model for the team. And I think I just picked words that, to me, what makes you a stellar employee. And I think efficient is one for me.
Yeah.
Passionate is definitely one for me. Are you a good role model for the team? Because I've seen that kind of fluctuate. There are people that, like, you know, for 6 months you were a great role model and now life hit you and now you're kind of a crappy role model. So I think things like that to me were words that if somebody said them to me would mean something.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And that can be different for, you know, people listening to this that may want to create their own form. Put your words in there. What does an exemplary employee look like to you? Okay, put that in that high or over. Kind of think it almost of like an over. Do you have an overachiever on your team? What are the qualities that they consistently display, and then put those words there. But I think those are really good examples of what a high rating.
I think the only one that I missed there that I would go back and add now, like dependable, which I've got it in the next one. So the next rating for good, takes initiative, volunteers for leadership, good self-concept, minimal errors, reliable, and creates the desired CDCI culture, which you're right. That's what prompted this was that we had just been talking about what are we looking for in our culture. And our culture, we had said, and I had everybody talk about, and it was that we are focused on the patient experience and the patient care. And so if we're not going to, you know, if we're going to slack and not verify insurance benefits appropriately, that is going to impact the patient decision. So I don't know what to tell you about what or why you missed doing that, but I need you to figure it out because the culture is we're trying to serve the patient. Anyway, moderate has some wins, many errors, not great, not bad, too good to fire, neutral. And I'm hoping nobody, like, well, if you get a moderate, I think you probably have already realized the writing's on the wall for you. You know? And then low does just the minimum, resistant, low tone, unreliable. Would anyone notice if you no longer worked here? And I worded it that way because I think that's what people need to kind of like, are you making a positive impact or are you not? And if you're not, get out of here.
Or worse, would people wish that you weren't working here?
Yeah. I think that's as mean as I could get. Would anyone notice if you were no longer here? And then please describe why you gave the rating above. So then it gives, you know, whoever the reviewer is can put some stuff there. So in the one I'm looking at right now for this one employee, they circled high, and the description was great attitude, team player, always willing to help anywhere she is needed, and she's reliable. And to me, I'm like, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And then we have a section that says more specific feedback. What is this teammate doing well? So in this case, the person said she gives her 100% even when she doesn't feel well. It's nice to see strong work ethic and ready to serve our patients. What would help this teammate grow or improve? Continue to be open-minded is the feedback that was given. And then meeting the team's valued behaviors. So the valued behaviors, that's what we came up with in our culture conversations. And that was an outcome of that was, what do we want? Who do we want to be working alongside? Like, what are the values that are important to all of us? And that's when we were saying, like, you know, a lot of the things that kind of got into, oh, this generation is lazy. That generation is fussy. This generation. And I was like, when I asked you and when we talked about it, I know we talked about this in the culture podcast a couple of months ago, or weeks ago, whenever it was, but there are things that we should all be able to agree upon.
Yes.
So what can we agree upon that we want for our patients and that we want from each other? Because if we want different things for our patients, then there's the answer. This is not the office for you.
Yeah.
And if we're expecting this out of each other and you're not delivering, well,
Right.
there's the answer. This is not the right office for you. And so I think what we came up with was ethics, integrity, honesty, all kind of bundled
Grouped
in.
into one.
Yep. Second was efficient, and that was mine, because I think that really sets apart. I really value efficiency, and I think that's where people struggle in my office, because I don't think they're like, well, why can't we just do that later? Or why can't we do this? Or why can't we? Because it's not efficient. And that's my core nature is how can we do this as efficiently as possible? And that doesn't bother everybody. And that's fine.
Right.
But it bothers me.
Yeah.
And I'm the one who pays your paycheck. So we better be efficient when we're doing this. And you, for example, we got on to one of our RDA team members because she was wanting to, I think we talked about it in a podcast about the
Yes.
nutrition and about asking a mom, but not like she was like, what, oh, the kid drinks juice. Okay. You're only brushing once in the morning. Okay. We're not flossing. Okay. Well, she was going to come back at the end of the appointment and sit and talk with the mom about that. And now the hygienist was like, what are you doing? She got mad at the hygienist.
Yeah.
And it's expecting me to get mad at the hygienist. I'm like, actually, I'm annoyed at you. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, that is grossly inefficient on multiple fronts. And I had to go through with her why it was inefficient. Now, that would probably fly in any other office. Like, as long as you got the information and you're counseling the mom and
then kind of who cares?
check box. But I'm not a checkbox office.
Yeah.
So you're not being as efficient and as effective as you could be. And I find that irritating. So anyway, respectful, strong work ethic, progressive mindset, collaborative, uses common sense. And I put that on there because, again, to me, efficiency is often tied with common sense. And it's people that, are not as high in the common sense are typically less efficient.
Yes.
That is 1,000% my opinion. And I know you don't need to be supported. That is a Kuba thought and opinion. But I wanted it on my checklist. So,
and that whole section, by the way, is a check mark. So those values are listed, and then there's an opportunity to the left of those values for the feedback giver to put a check mark in those boxes. And so it's interesting, like even as I flip through this packet that I have right here, like this particular team member, there's a couple of them where she's check marked on all of them. She's upholding all of those values. And then these are the interesting ones to me. This sheet that I'm looking at here, this same person who just got check marks on all of those, this particular person left off, did not check mark, efficient, progressive/growth mindset, and uses common sense. They check marked all the other ones, but those three, like you were talking about, are oftentimes tied together. Efficient and uses common sense. Those go hand in hand. And so without saying anything, this person, by check marking everything else and leaving those three off, that says a lot.
yeah.
That says this person thinks that they could improve upon those things. And so I think it's such a good variety because there's essentially multiple choice at the top, right? With circling high, good, moderate, or low. And you can circle just that rating or the words that associate with it. Why did you give that rating is open-ended. More specific feedback. What is the team doing well? That's an open-ended question. What would what would help the teammate grow? That's open-ended. And then it's check marks. But it's core values that y'all have said are a part of being good on this team. And then there's a final ending that's just open-ended feedback. Just all it says is feedback, and then there's a whole blank section where they can, and it's on on almost all of these, there's additional feedback, just like a summarizing comment.
Yeah. So on the one that I've been going on, it's funny you say that because yes, she's got everything checkmarked from this one reviewer who, when I'm reading the handwriting, I'm like, I think that's her bestie in the office. And so she checked everything.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at another one and they didn't circle a rating, but they just circled words again.
Yes.
So there's some words in the high and most of the words that are circled are under good. And then same thing. Now they didn't check everything at the bottom. So that's funny to me, like you said, like they're taking the time. Now, they didn't check ethical honesty, but I'm like, this person is ethical and honest, but maybe whoever reviewed it is like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And they did put efficient, respectful, strong work ethic, but they did not check uses common sense, did not check collaborative. And then, like you're saying, the next one who reviewed her checked everything except uses common sense.
See? Isn't that interesting?
Yes. And this last one too did not check uses common sense.
Yeah.
So it's just funny where you can see, there's the only one that checked uses common sense for her was her bestie.
Yeah. And that's so interesting. And so to me, as I'm sitting and reviewing these engagement scales, because these are new, and the conversations were changed by the ones that I did last month because there's just so much more content actually to review, which was really cool. But I really enjoy pointing out those differences on the check marks to the person that I'm reviewing it with. It's like, hey, it looks like you're doing consistently well with all the things they got check marked on every one of them. And then these are the ones that were sometimes left off. This one, this one, this one. So then they know walking away from that, oh, okay, I'm really upholding all, my team thinks that I'm holding up these 7 consistently, but these 3 are the ones that I need to work on. So it gives some clarity for the employee to walk out with that comment. So anyway, I love this. I love it a lot.
Yay!
And I hope too that just by hearing the details of it, because I talk about team feedback a lot. We've talked about it on one of the episodes that we've done, but I think the actual practical, how do I put something together to allow feedback? This is a really good example. It doesn't have to be just this. It can be, but this is a good starting point if somebody just is like, I don't know how to put together a team feedback form. I'll give you one other alternative that I just created for a team that I was with last week. And it is not going to be near as in depth. I prefer what you created, but if you want to just get started with feedback, there is something that I created because I felt like this team needed it, and I called it the Team Love Letter. And it is I almost created it, you can see it, I almost created it like Mad Libs. Like there's these words, and then you fill in the blank. And so I'm going to read this just so you can understand. This was very effective. I literally just created this. It was my first time rolling it out. I really watched as people were completing these for each of their team members to figure out what was the blank that stumped them. How long did it take them to complete these, which was much longer than I anticipated. And so it says, Dear blank, dear team member, this is my note of encouragement to you. One of the things that I appreciate the most about you is blank. And there's like enough to write a sentence or two. You show, excuse my French here, but you show what a badass RDA you are, or RDH, or admin, or doctor. You show what a badass RDA you are when you blank. I know that blank is hard for you, but I admire how you blank. Our team would not be the same without your blank. You make such a positive impact on our patients when you blank. You positively impact our team when you blank. You motivate me when you blank. I am sometimes stressed by your blank. And in these times, I try to make things better by blank. Sometimes the following things can hold you back. Blank. As a coworker and friend, I want you to shine brighter and brighter every day. So if I had one piece of advice to give you, it would be blank. Thank you for all that you bring to our team. I am personally most thankful for your blank. And I am thrilled to work alongside you, your teammate and friend, and then they actually sign their name.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that. Will you put a link on the thing?
Yes.
And I'm happy to share mine. I just don't think I have a blank one.
Oh, do you not?
I might. Let me look for it after we're done recording.
We'll try to get these both in. By the way, for our listeners who are not on our newsletter, please reach out to us because we do have a newsletter that goes out each week, an electronic newsletter that just shows the podcast, and any relevant links are often listed in that email, but I'll try to get it on the show notes as well. So if you're just looking for a starting point, I think either one of these two options, to me, that love letter is more of like maybe an annual thing.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good for repetitive feedback, but the feedback form that you have is a good repetitive ongoing, because there are differences that occur even every couple of months. These answers will change that team members have written.
Well, it's one that we've got a stack of right there that I can think of one employee, and it's funny, like there's 4 or 5 feedback forms and they're all different for this one person.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening is the last time she had an engagement scale, everything was going great. And now I think some of them that are still like, yay, rock star, you're a hero. And then the others in the pile are like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
I think what's happening is some of the people that don't realize all the balls she's dropping now, they're still going, which is good. I guess if not everybody's caught wind of it. But the ones that work closer with her are going, dude. And so sometimes you see that, which is great conversation for you to have with this person to go, okay, well, clearly some people think you're doing great, and I think you were last time. But, and you know, of course, this person has had some home life issue things pop up since the last time.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it now.
Yeah.
And so
it's just good conversation. And you and I feel like if there's one thing we preach, it's a lot of investing in your team from a feedback standpoint, not being afraid of that, being willing to get in the trenches and have those difficult conversations. But this is a structure for that. This is a tangible structure that you can implement.
I know you're trying to wrap up here, but I have a question for you that I'm sure a lot of audience members will have. For me, we do these, and then when you're in the office, we know that's one thing that you're going to do is go through these. For somebody who doesn't have you come into their office monthly, I know that's going to be one thing that it's like, wait, when am I supposed to sit and do these? So how would you?
So this is where it falls back to, if it's just the doctor, and maybe there's plenty of small teams out there that are just the doctor, an RDA, and an admin team member. So that's going to be in some ways a little bit easier and a little bit more difficult, because it's easier because it's only two team members that you're having to meet with. And so that can be, I would suggest doing that over an extended lunch break, and again, that's just scheduling it out. If it's only 2 team members, I would maybe put that on a quarterly rotation rather than weekly. You're having them fill out another form on each other. It's 2 people. So that it's easier to do that because it's easier to schedule over one lunch break, but it's more challenging because it's only 2 team members. So there's no anonymity whatsoever. The doctor would also, of course, need to be filling out the form as well, so that team member has at least 2 feedbacks to look at. For a larger team that maybe doesn't have a consultant or a manager or something like that, it's going to fall to the doctor to have to sit and review these. And so again, instead of doing it right now in our office, in your office, I love being able to, that it's consistent. It's every week they're filling out on somebody. And then maybe you take a 1 month break and then start the process again, but it gets people in the habit of completing those forms. So I like where we can habitually implement something. So that could be that maybe for a month, in a larger office that doesn't have a consultant that's coming in and reviewing it, maybe it's like, okay, we're going to still do a quarterly rotation, but we're going to cram that all into 1 month. And for 1 month, we have each team member filling out maybe 2. Maybe we're doing it for employee A and B. And then at the end of that month, we've scheduled a half day or on an off day that team members are asked to come in. They're encouraged to do other tasks while the doctor is meeting with individuals. So it could be kind of a spring cleaning type day or administrative catch-up day. And then that doctor has the ability to pull in each individual team member. But that's easier to schedule on a quarterly basis rather than more consistent.
When I would say that probably would be, what I would do if I didn't have you, I would probably make sure that like May is slow in our office. And I know June and July, I'm exhausted. End of August is slow again in our office. So maybe if I go ahead and preemptively schedule those, that way we at least know it's coming. They know it's coming. That way they know it's not like you're in trouble, which is why you're doing an engagement scale like we had planned for this.
Yeah, I think so too. So the planning of it I think is the hardest part. And hopefully going through this form gives at least people a starting point so that you can put the form. I feel like it's just taking that first step of putting a feedback form together. And it's like, if you can take nothing away from this podcast, at least get that done and then figure out your plan of how you're going to implement it. Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.